A very good evening. You're watching the Super Saturday Debate. I'm Akanksha Swaroop. Immigration is now an instrument of economic nationalism, at least for Donald Trump it is, because on Friday the US President raised the fee for H1B visas to a staggering $100,000 annually. It's the latest move in the administration's efforts to crack down on immigration, one that's bound to adversely impact Indian professionals on visas in the United States. In the line of fire will be US tech firms themselves. This as they will face a steep increase in hiring costs. They will now be bound to scale back their hiring of skilled workers from abroad, meaning US tech firms will hire more Americans locally. Indian tech companies abroad will also feel the strain. Meanwhile, India's Ministry of External Affairs has reacted, reminding US that industries in both countries have a stake in innovation and creativity, and that the industry should be consulted on the best path forward. On skilled talent mobility and exchanges, the MEA has stated the policymakers will assess the recent steps taking into account mutual benefits, which include strong people-to-people ties between India and the United States. India's foreign ministry has also highlighted that this measure is likely to have humanitarian consequences by way of the disruption caused to families. The Indian government hopes that these disruptions can be addressed suitably by the US authorities. Meanwhile, the IT industry body NASSCOM has also criticized the move. It says that the country's technology services companies will also be impacted as business continuity will be disrupted for onshore projects too. While domestic politics has already started brewing, with leader of opposition Rahul Gandhi labeling the Indian Prime Minister as a weak Prime Minister. There's no doubt that India now faces a complex challenge. The outflow of engineers to the US may slow. This could create a brain gain for India if only India builds the capacity to employ and empower them at home. But the country could also lose remittances, knowledge transfer, and the influence of a global diaspora. India must now prepare for a world where mobility is costlier, access more uncertain, and global talent flows is more politicized thanks to Donald Trump. The moot question being, how soon can India come up with an indigenous IT-enabled services model? That's the question we'll be posing to our guests as well.
The United States of America is systematically turning on the screws on India. What happened with regard to the H1B visa is not coincidental at all.
इस बात की चेतावनी राहुल जी ने 5 जुलाई 2017 को दी थी। कमजोर प्रधानमंत्री, किस तरह की उनकी कमजोरी है उसका नतीजा रोज मिल रहा है।
Let me introduce my esteemed guests today. I'm joined in by Karan Verma, who's a political analyst, also joined in by the national spokesperson of the Congress Party, Mr. Salman Soz, and Kshitij Agarwal, who's the CEO of Tequila Global Services Limited. Many thanks to you, gentlemen. Salman, I want to ask you, what explains this kind of repeated insults being hurled at the Prime Minister, whether it is about referring to our country as a dead economy, endorsing what the US President has said, and today, of course, we all know what he's said about the Prime Minister, calling him a weak Prime Minister. It all goes back to Operation Sindoor, when there was a caricature released about the Prime Minister, which said Gayab, and later it was also deleted. I'd like your thoughts.
Well, I don't think calling the Prime Minister weak is an insult. I mean, he's not a baby, he's an adult. And we think he's weak, and he's absolutely shown himself to be weak. Let us first understand what this issue is, because it's a very serious issue. It seems like every day we're confronted with one more failure of our foreign policy establishment, if there is any establishment in this country. Now, there are 70% of H1B visa holders are Indians. And every year, Indians living in the United States, mostly they're H1B visa holders, send home over $30 billion every year. So this is not a joke. They also bring their talent, they also bring their knowledge, they also bring their ideas to this country. So in some ways, it's a bit of a reverse brain drain. They also invest in this country. But it isn't as if they're living in America for free. They contribute to that economy. They pay taxes in that country. They're very hardworking people. They go there with certain dreams. Their families put together money to send them there. And now they're in a perilous kind of time. And why? Because our government has basically become so ineffective. It's incredible. All the kind of chamchagiri that the Prime Minister has done, I'm sorry to say this, but that's what it is. I remember in February of 2025, this year, earlier, he talked about how MAGA plus MEGA, which I guess is Make India Great Again, is equal to mega. Make eggs great again, I guess. Anda. That's what
Salman, I take objection. I take objection. No, I take objection to offensive language for the Prime Minister. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Because the term chamchagiri is absolutely, it's ludicrous that you're using that term. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. If you are talking about him, pandering to the US president, well, that's wrong, because he made it amply clear to the US president that India has never sought any third-party mediation on Kashmir, and that Kashmir is only a bilateral issue. It is only after he stood his ground that the US president made that overture of wishing him a happy birthday, and the trade talks have resumed.
Let me tell you something, Akanksha. I take great umbrage at what you are doing as an anchor. Your job is to conduct the debate. Let Prime Minister Modi and the BJP defend themselves. He's not a baby. He doesn't.
No, I am not. I'm just saying that, let's not use offensive languages for anybody. Not just for the Prime Minister, but anybody. It could be somebody on the panel. It could be me. It could be you.
He has pandered to the United States. He is against the interests of this country. Every time he's been quiet. What was this? He's the one who went and said, "Ab ki baar Trump sarkar." What about our children who are in these countries? What about these people who are working hard, the middle-class families who put together so much money to send their children there?
Now you're making sense. Now you're making sense when you're raising the right question.
Prime Minister says,
I agree with you. All right. Let me take it forward with Karan Verma.
This diplomacy is not working.
All right.
This is not working for us.
Karan Verma, the second presidency of Donald Trump has indeed come across as a disappointment, because there was a lot of build-up about how there's this bonhomie between the Indian Prime Minister and the US President, and that this will be a win-win combo. But we've seen that's certainly not shaped up to be the case. And it's not just India, it's the entire world that is reeling in the after effect of the tariff war that has been waged by the US president, particularly two gigantic economies, that is India and China. How much can India control at the moment when it comes to the whims and fancies under an uncertain President Donald Trump? Because we all know he's mastered the art of U-turns.
So, Akanksha, at the very outset, you pretty much asked the direct question, what can we control? I mean, instead of whining, instead of saying this is what Modi ji had said, this is what Trump had said, what is wrong that we are doing? That's what Salman should ideally point out. Is there anything that we are doing that we should be doing and we've not done? That's the big question. We are the ones who are preparing for capacity building. Rather than calling someone weak, someone ineffective, we are the ones today who are talking about semiconductor plants here. We are the ones who've rolled out schemes. The government has rolled out schemes like PLI, production linked incentives. We have to build our capacity. Taking a leaf from what Salman said, he said these are hard-working people and there is going to be a reverse brain drain. Should we not see this as an opportunity? That is the big question. Predicting Donald Trump is none of our business. We tried to have a good relationship. It's always a good relationship. It's always a good thing to have a relationship with an incoming president. Now, if he is unpredictable and the world is suffering the consequences of it, not just India, as you said right now, Akanksha, whether it's the EU, whether it's Canada, whether it's NATO for that matter, then there's not much we can do. All we can do is build on our capacity, and I take strong objection to the language Salman uses. I take Salman as an intelligent spokesperson, but when he says he's a baby, he's weak and all of that, this Prime Minister has not relented. Had he relented, we would have had a trade deal by now. Had he relented, we would have opened up our agriculture sector to the Americans. We did not do that. We safeguarded our interests. We imposed retaliatory tariffs on steel and aluminium at the WTO level. So let's not, broad brush this as weak and ineffective, and we've not been that. Had we been weak, I repeat, we would have had a trade deal by now. We don't have a trade deal.
Okay.
Donald Trump continued spreading this lie that, I ensured there is a ceasefire between India and Pakistan because of trade. Had that been the case, there would have been a trade deal. There hasn't been one.
I completely agree with you over here, and that is why, Salman, I'm just going to come. Kshitij has been patiently awaiting his turn. Kshitij, taking that point forward, which Karan is making, India has stood its ground firmly. That's why, whether it is about protecting our own domestic concerns with regards to agriculture or the interest of our MSMEs, that's perhaps the reason also why there was this lull or limbo as far as trade talks are concerned. Why they have also resumed is also a shot in the arm for our own diplomacy. But Kshitij Agarwal, let's talk about empowering domestic employment. Is India prepared to do so with this brain gain, not the brain drain of what Salman may call a reverse brain drain?
See, thank you so much, for having me on the show. So, first of all, you need to understand, US, more than 60% of the US Fortune 500, right, were formed by the immigrants, right? The people who came outside from, US, who formed all this, and they made America what it is today, right? I think if you talk about those companies itself generated 7 trillion of revenue in last couple of years, right? For US, okay? Imagine those people coming back to India, what value they will bring back to India. That's, I know, like in the short term, yes, we are talking about losing probably $5 to $10 billion of remittance in India, right? But imagine these people who are engineers in a Google or Meta and all those things, when they will come to India, they will come back as an entrepreneur. For every engineer lost in US, they are an entrepreneur in India. And the kind of revenue they will bring to India, the kind of things they will bring to India will be immense. Of course, short term, yes, there will always be disruption. There will always be issues, right, which always happens when these sudden moves are taking place. But in the long term, I think it will do more damage to US and more benefit to India. That's what I think. And especially, there is a lot of focus of GCCs in India. And the companies are opening GCCs like they are already 1650 GCCs in India, and they are scaling up to 3,000 GCCs by 2030. I think after this move, maybe that number will increase much higher. Okay. And the companies will start looking for how to basically increase more dependency offshore rather than hiring onshore. So eventually, I think it might not, instead of hurting India, it might even benefit India.
Salman, I want to quickly bring you in now on that note. Salman.
So, just a couple of points. One, of course, I did not call him a baby. I said he's not a baby. He does not you people to defend him.
But you did,
yes,
you did use the term chamchagiri. There's nobody doing. India has been it's a South Asian economic giant. We don't need to do chamchagiri.
Akanksha, I'm sorry. I listen very patiently to everybody, but you should not be interrupting me.
And you should allow me to also have a conversation with you. I really like that.
Wait for your turn then. You wait for your turn. Let me speak. It's my time. Now, have you forgotten that this was the same man who called Prime Minister Manmohan Singh a man with wearing bangles? Now, is that I must say that time you people were cheering him on. But anyway, those are bygones. Let it be. The point here is not about the point here is not what is going to happen in the long term. In the short term, what is happening to our country? We have the tariffs that President Trump has imposed on our country. Already, we're seeing an estimated over 2 lakh crore rupees of losses.
Well, there are over 100% tariffs imposed on China. So will you question the presidency of Xi Jinping also? I'm asking you a question, Salman.
I'm just, first let me finish my thought. You did not interrupt anybody else. Let the people in the country see that the CNN, News 18 people interrupt only opposition people. Let the public see. Because we're talking for the public. Now, look at what's happened to Chabahar Port. Our exemption is gone. Look at the EU. By the way, EU, Canada, fighting for their workers, their skilled workers. Brazil fighting against America. China fighting against America. I'm not saying, by the way, I think, I've lived a lot of my life in America. I think America is a great partner for us, will be, but partnership has to be on equal terms. Our foreign minister should not be reacting to things. They should be proactive. And by the way, if you're not going to be proactive, we keep seeing this. By the way, did President Trump not tell the EU to impose tariffs on India? They did. So we have to be careful.
Okay. Now may I ask you a counter question? May I ask you?
Just 10 seconds. Just 10 seconds, and then you can ask me as much as you want. As far as I think the young gentleman, the first one who spoke, talked about how there are PLI schemes and other things, and the government is doing all sorts of great things. Why is it that manufacturing as a share of GDP is less than 13%, the lowest since 1960? Prime Minister Modi wanted it to be 25%. So please, don't give us all this gyan.
Okay.
This government is actually hurting the interests of our young people.
Since you talk about, I want to ask you, just over a year ago, the relationship with Canada was being touted as having hit its lowest ebb under the previous prime ministership of Justin Trudeau. With Mark Carney, we are seeing there is forward movement yet again. We've had NSA level talks. There will be intel sharing. There is going to be addressing of transnational terrorism as well. So there is forward movement on that side. This is the nature of diplomacy. I'm sure you will agree. Today it's something, tomorrow it may be something else.
Yes,
Tell me,
yes,
how did Manmohan Singh's government back in the year 2008, you're my senior, you'll know this better, navigate a coalition government to bring everybody on their side when it came to forging that civil nuclear agreement with the Bush government of the United States back in 2008? How did he manage to do that? He managed it, right? He managed it. He had a coalition government of left parties which were opposing it. The Samajwadi Party was opposing it, but eventually he brought them all together. Can we have a prime minister take India forward where the opposition is constantly questioning not just the prime minister but its own armed forces?
No, look, I don't know what this question is about. We're not questioning our armed forces ever. The Congress Party and the armed forces.
Really? Then why are we always questioning how many Indian jets were downed during Operation Sindhu?
I will again. So we can have that discussion.
No, then I will present my facts. Rahul Gandhi's tweet of 23rd May says, why has India been hyphenated with Pakistan? Why didn't a single country back us on condemning Pakistan, which is ludicrous because I can name how many were. Who asked Trump to mediate between India and Pakistan? India's foreign policy has collapsed.
Let me correct you a little bit.
Can I
Most countries, of course, would condemn terrorism, but nobody was condemning Pakistan, as opposed to the time when Mumbai attacks happened. Pakistan was called out in a United Nations Security Council resolution. There's a huge difference between these. And by the way, when Manmohan Singh ji was called, may God grant him paradise, he used to be called, what was he called? A weak prime minister. They used to call him Mon Singh ji. And through he was a quiet man, but he wielded a big stick. I remember there was an Indian diplomat who was insulted in New York. And when she came back, after that, you should go back into history and see what happened to US diplomats and how they were basically brought to heel.
All right. I want to bring in Karan Verma. Karan Verma, has India stood its ground or not? That's a moot question right now. At a time when questions are being raised against the Indian Prime Minister, against the Indian government, we also have the MEA statement coming in that policy makers will have to work their way forward. The timing is extremely delicate. Remember, there was this limbo when it came to the trade talks to, in fact, ensure the good of our own agriculturalists, our own MSMEs is India's top priority right now. H1B will also perhaps feature in the talks at some point. Karan Verma, your thoughts?
So, Akanksha, mature nations, they adapt to the dynamic environment. And that's precisely what our government is doing right now. Rather than whining and crying over it, we had an FTA, a free trade agreement with UK. We are in talks with UAE and others. We are exploring other options as to how we can expand our market. So that is what mature countries do. But I really need to fact check some of the things that our good friend Salman ji here just said. He nitpicked on one statistic and painted such a grim picture of our economy, manufacturing as a part of GDP. He doesn't tell you that today our GDP is growing at a rate of 7.8%, where the inflation is as low as 2%. Mind you, we had double-digit inflation for 20 months during the UPA regime. As far as manufacturing is concerned, just to give you a little idea, our defense requirements. We were importing 65% of our requirements. Today, we are manufacturing 65% of our requirements, and our export, our defense export is up by 30 times post 2014. So that is where our economy stands, unlike Rahul Gandhi, who calls it a dead economy. He pretty much matches his tone with Donald Trump saying our country is a dead economy. And for Salman to say that we never disrespected our armed forces, when you say Narendra surrender, despite the DGMO officially briefing you that the operations were seized because of Pakistan's DGMO calling, you disrespect the army when you say udhar se phone aaya aur Modi ne surrender kar diya. That is where you disrespect our DGMO. That is where you disrespect our army. You should play the role of a constructive opposition, not one suggestion given by Salman on your show. What should India have done? Should India have rolled up its sleeves and stared back at Trump? Give me one suggestion that you've come up with in this entire show of 25 minutes, despite repeatedly, Akanksha asking you repeatedly as to what we should do.
15 seconds to Salman for a rebuttal, and then I need to take closing thoughts from Kshitij.
I'm puzzled. Here's a political analyst who seems more like a BJP spokesperson, which is very good. That's good for you. But the fact of the matter is this. Anytime you criticize Prime Minister Modi, they try to put him behind the military. This is what Prime Minister Modi has done himself. But India is not Modi.
All right.
Okay?
Thank you for not coming up with any constructive feedback or suggestion. But Kshitij, as far as global condemnation of Pahalgam is concerned, we have had the joint declaration from BRICS. We've just recently had a joint declaration from the SCO summit in Tianjin, where nations unopposed have condemned the Pahalgam terror attack, called for the perpetrators to be brought to justice. Kshitij Agarwal, my last question is, was India not anticipating this? Why wasn't there ample investment in emerging technologies like AI product development and patents, even say efforts to enhance greater research or intellectual property? Was India not adequately prepared? Because ever since Trump took to power in January, we have been anticipating a situation like this.
Yeah, again, to be honest, yes, in the short term, as I mentioned, it's going to hit us a lot. And we should have prepared better in terms of the investments on AI, in terms of investments on IT, in terms of a lot of investments in various sectors, right? Like, for example, if China has become, one of the leading in AI or leading in other things, of course, the government has supported with an immense number of funding, for multiple things, which I know India is also doing. But they have to double down, maybe even triple down, or 10x, okay, whatever they're doing. I'm not saying it's a great start, but we have to keep on investing a lot, because when there will be a brain gain back to India, we have to generate enough opportunities for them in India, have some more policy, like some plans, some different strategies all in place, which can eventually help make India so that we can make our own Meta, we can make our own Google, we can make our own things, and eventually I think it's going to be a opportunity where India can become independent of other countries, like other countries have done already. So I think it might be, as I keep saying, as an entrepreneur, I always try to see an opportunity rather than just be sad about the what is happening currently. And I think government is they have to roll up the sleeves. I know they have been very supportive, but they should also make sure they come
Absolutely.
up. They should speak to the entrepreneurs.
Perhaps this is the time for Prime Minister Modi also to realize his own vision of an Atmanirbhar Bharat, and this is the opportune time for India to in fact become Atmanirbhar completely. I'm going to have to end it at that. Many thanks to you gentlemen for joining in, and thank you to all our viewers for tuning in to the Super Saturday Debate. News and updates continue on the other side.